Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Suzanne Simon with Restore America's Estuaries. I'm the program director for the NEP Coastal Watersheds grants. I'm joined today by our communications lead, Rob Shane. You'll hear his voice from time to time. The information and the request for proposals, all that information is available on our website, which is www.estuaries.org. So I'm going to be turning off my camera. I mostly just wanted a chance to put a face to a name. So with that, we will get on with the webinar. Okay, a couple of housekeeping announcements before we get too far along. Everyone is on mute. If you have a question or a comment, please submit it via the control panel. If we do not address your comment or question, please email me or make an appointment with me to touch base, and I'll describe that, how to do that later in the webinar. This webinar is a second of two. Both are being recorded, and we will post the one, presumably the better one, to our channel and the Coastal Watersheds Grant website. All right, so what we will be covering, we're going to do an overview of the NEP Coastal Watersheds Grant Program, eligibility, amount of funding available, budget match, and the overall processes. Before we get into that, who we are, you can see there, we are a national organization dedicated to the protection and restoration of bays and estuaries as essential resources for our nation. We couldn't do it without our member groups shown there. And also we have affiliate members shown at the bottom. It's a great opportunity for folks to join us, and there's information on our website about that. Some quick opportunities and resources you may find interesting and valuable. The 2022 summit is going to be in New Orleans in December. Please note that proposals for the summit program are due next week on April 8th. There's also other resources, including information on our webinar series and our restoration toolkit, along with other great stuff. Please check it out at estuaries.org. Okay, a quick overview of the NEP Coastal Watersheds Program. The NEP portion stands for National Estuary Program, which is a place-based program within the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency with the goal to protect and restore the water quality and ecological integrity of the estuaries of national significance. Currently, 28 estuaries located along the Atlantic, Gulf, and Pacific coast and in Puerto Rico are designated as estuaries of national significance. EPA has a great website that provides more details on the program. I encourage you to check that out. The Coastal Watersheds Grant Program was established by Congress as a competitive fund designed to help coastal areas and to address urgent and challenging issues. We here at Restore America's Estuaries administer this program in close coordination with and funding from EPA. So this program, we're in the third round of 4. So this is the third round. Again, there'll be one more next year. Okay, getting down to the nitty gritty. One of the biggest issues is geographic eligibility. So only projects that occur within these polygons on this website, on this page, excuse me, are eligible. So there is an interactive map. The link is in the RFP and it's located in a number of places. It's also on the NEP website. So basically any on the ground work must occur in these polygons. So you can have team members, excuse me, that occur elsewhere. Like for example, let's say you have a lab that's outside of that, that's fine. But anything on the ground must occur in one or more of these polygons. So in terms of, okay, how did these come to be? The brief description is that these eligibility areas encompass the existing 28 National Estuary Program sites, plus some additional upstream and or downstream portions. Please note that these are designated by EPA and there is no wiggle room. So in other words, if it's adjacent upstream, downstream, if it doesn't occur in these polygons, the project isn't eligible. And if you ask how these polygons came to be, basically EPA used what's called the HUC, which is a hydrologic unit code, HUC 12s, and explains why some of them may have some what look to be kind of unexpected boundaries. So like I said, there's a great interactive map, and one example that I got this year already was is the Sassafras River eligible? So here it is. Here's the Sassafras River. This is Maryland's eastern shore. You can see the Delaware-Maryland line here. And so the answer is it depends on where it is. So the upper reaches up here that are in the shaded portions that would be eligible. Anything downstream would not. And of course, there is a recognition that the downstream area would benefit, but the on the ground portion has to occur in those upper reaches. Okay, next in terms of eligibility are the entities. Again, I strongly encourage you to check the RFP for details on this definition along with other things. The webinar is meant to be kind of a higher level overview, so just know that a lot of these have additional details in the document itself. So entities would be public organizations, state, county, local, regional entities. They can be multi-jurisdictional. They can be entities in more than one of those polygons. They're all fine as long as it's public. Nonprofit, it's pretty straightforward. You have to be able to demonstrate your nonprofit status, academic institutions, tribes. An important note that for-profit organization and federal agencies may be on the team, but may not be the applicant. And the definition of a team member for the purposes of this RFP is an organization that will receive funds or will be providing match. And in either one of those cases, they would be listed in the project budget. You may partner with your local NEP. That's absolutely fine. And I would encourage you to chat with them either way. And then kind of as a clarification, given the competitive nature of this grant, there will be only one award per entity. So you can put more than one LOI in, but there will not be more than one award for any given organization. All right, moving on. Eligibility, what's not allowed. Again, please check the RFP. This is a high-level overview. Research. Now, this is the difference between what I would call applied research and, let's say, academic or quote-unquote ivory tower research. So in that case, every research and I'll get to this in a minute, monitoring, it has to go to inform on the ground efforts and conditions to a local estuary. Standalone outreach education, again, this is pretty straightforward. So outreach is obviously an important part and we would look for that, but standalone, in other words, if it's the only thing that you're proposing, that would not be eligible. Monitoring only, kind of similar. It can be an important part of a project, but it must not be the only thing. Land acquisition is not an eligible use, although it may, that's for the federal funds portion, it may be used to meet the non-federal match requirement. Social surveys, questionnaires, and similar efforts, those have to be completely funded outside of the federal funding. Activities that are required as parts of legal settlements, mitigation, stuff like that, also not allowed or eligible. A maximum of 3 proposals. I already mentioned that to a certain extent. Yes, you can submit more than, excuse me, 1 LOI, but no more than 3, please. And if you have questions, please get in touch. Like I said, you can email me, you can call me. I know that there's some gray areas in some of these categories. Also, for planning and feasibility, we realize that that's an important part of it. These activities are eligible so long as the applicant demonstrates a clear connection between the proposed efforts and improved coastal and estuarine conditions. So I'm going to pause there for a sec and ask Rob if there are any questions or requests for clarification.
So there is a question from Pat in the chat here that says, can a nonprofit or academic be in Canada? And I'm unclear if he means the applicant, the recipient of the grant, or I shouldn't say he, if Pat means the nonprofit or academic, the recipient of the grant, or a partner on an application. But
Great.
maybe you know the answer.
I do know the answer, I'm happy to say. So the applicant must be in the United States, but the team members can occur in Canada.
Okay. Hopefully that answers your question, Pat.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
Pat, if you have any more information or you'd like more clarification, by all means, please reach out to me. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Nope, not right now.
All right, let's move on. All right, so the 2022 project requirements, again, this is a broad overview. Please check the RFP for details. One of the biggest things we're looking for is the proposed project or effort must address priority actions in the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan, the CCMP. So these documents are produced by the NEPs, and they identify the biggest challenges and the actions that they want to see. There is a list of the CCMPs on EPA's National Estuary Program webpage, so I would encourage you to go check that out. Again, that's absolutely critical. The projects must be 1 to 2 years in length. The project must yield environmental results and be able to report on it. In other words, be able to tell the story, be able to have environmental results with a focus on natural systems benefits, and address 1 or more of the 4 priorities for this RFP. As I said, this is the 3rd of 4 rounds. Each RFP had a slightly different mix of these priorities, and they reflect the specification mandates that Congress set. So the 4 for this RFP are proliferation or invasion of species, flooding and coastal erosion, loss of key habitats, and unusual or unexplained marine mammal mortalities. Again, please check the RFP for more details. So this is the show me the money slide. Funding and number of awards. We're going to be awarding approximately $800,000 this cycle. There is a little wiggle room in that, depends on how the projects come in. The per project cost will be $75,000 to $250,000. Now that is the amount of federal funds to be awarded, not the total project. And then, so if you do the math, we're looking at approximately between 4 and 10 awards. Continuing on the money theme, so this is on the right-hand side, you see this is the mock-up that's in the RFP. This is an imaginary project, but the intent is to show the various categories and how things have to be split out. Please follow this budget table example, particularly with respect to the categories. Again, if you have questions, please reach out. One of the biggest things to keep in mind is there is a non-federal match requirement of 33%. So for example, if you're requesting federal funding in the amount of $100,000, the requested non-federal match would be $33,000. Then the project total would be $133,000. I really encourage you to think through how you can get match if that can be a hurdle for some folks. I jokingly say be creative but legal, right? So some other things to think about: volunteer hours, in-kind contributions, time and efforts of partners, donated lab space, donated boat time, that all counts towards your match. Some other things about match: the match must occur and be expended during the contracted period. So for example, a land purchase from 2 years ago would not be eligible. So all the match has to occur during the contracted time. Match may not be from settlements, mitigation, etc., nor can most NIFWIS, which is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation funds, be used as match. There are some exceptions to that, so please see the RFP. The reason for that is most NIFWIF money originates from the federal coffers, and therefore it doesn't meet the non-federal definition. Again, please see the RFP for details. And then new this year, this is why it's in red, you may request a waiver from the non-federal match requirements. Note that requesting a waiver will not impact how a proposal is reviewed, nor will a waiver automatically be granted. The applicant will need to provide the details and the online portal, which I'll get to in just a sec. But again, there's more information in the RFP, and we're trying to keep that fairly qualitative, kind of talk about where you're doing the work, the impact of the work, that sort of a thing. One other thing about the budget is we do have the ability to do pre-award. In other words, a little bit of time before the actual contract gets signed, but that's on a case-by-case basis. So as you're thinking about developing your budget, don't assume that that will automatically occur. But that's kind of for down the line, but it is important for folks as they're thinking about their timelines. Okay, I'm going to pause right there for a second and ask Rob, has anything else come in?
No questions so far.
All righty, thank you. Moving on. So how do you do this? All right, so it's a two-step process. One is a letter of intent, and then the LOI followed by a full proposal if invited. The reason we do this is based on our feedback, we're trying to keep the process efficient. And yes, there is a burden here, but we felt it was important to not ask folks for a crazy amount of stuff on the front end. There is an online submittal portal. Again, the link is in the RFP. I strongly recommend that you develop all the materials in a separate document and then providing the required information via the portal, keeping the word limits in mind. Okay, so usually a lot of folks are coming in with multiple partners. Make sure everything, all your I's are dotted, all your T's are crossed, and then enter it into the portal. You do have the ability to start and save a proposal partway through. And that's fine, life happens, but definitely still recommend using a separate document to develop all your materials. The timeline, May 27th is when the LOIs are due. On July 29th, we will notify applicants regarding the status of their LOI. That is if you will be invited to submit a full proposal. If invited to do so, full proposals are due on September 23rd. And then folks will be notified on November 18th. In terms of contracting, the goal is to have everything buttoned up and fully contracted by the first quarter of 2023. Some other things to keep in mind as you're developing your project, the evaluation frameworks are in the RFP. In other words, are criteria by which the LOI and the full proposals will be reviewed. And then last but not least, and this is really important, the letter of acknowledgement for the local or nearest NEP. Please reach out sooner than later. It's the responsibility of the applicants to reach the deadlines. In other words, don't expect an NEP director to drop everything that they're doing at the last minute because they need a letter. And the list of NEP contacts is on EPA's National Estuary Program webpage. So again, the other thing to keep in mind with these are letters of acknowledgement, not support. And it's basically a way for the local NEPs to understand what's happening in their watersheds. I've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. This is the third of 4 rounds, so we expect to have one more after this one. So that's the big picture on the process and timelines. Okay, so that's kind of the broad overview. I fully recognize that there are still a lot of questions and every project is different. So new for this year, we've set up a system to hopefully make it even easier to set up time to talk if you still have questions. I did some quick screenshots here. So on the left-hand side, you start at the 2022 Coastal Watersheds Grant page on the RAE website, estuaries.org. And you see that at the bottom of the page, there's a thing that says, click this link if you want to schedule time. And that will take you to a scheduler where you can make 30-minute one-on-one appointment with me in whatever format you'd like. We can do a phone call or virtual meeting, whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever works for you. The idea is to hopefully make this as easy as possible for you to get any questions answered. Okay. So I realize that that's kind of a quick overview, and that was sort of the intention. Please check out the information on our website. and feel free to reach out to me with questions. So I will pause there again. Rob, are there any other questions that have come in?
So far, no. I think you've got, oh, one just came in. Projects in upstream watershed, are projects in the upstream watershed to an estuary as competitive as projects directly in or adjacent to the estuary? As long as the projects are in the CCMP.
Yes, well, as long as they are in the geographic eligibility areas, absolutely. The core philosophy of this project, this program, is to improve, if you will, on the ground or in the water estuarine conditions, and upstream is extraordinarily important for that. So long as on the ground work is happening in the geographic eligibility polygons, it is absolutely eligible, and it will be competitive.
Great.
Oh, I think another one just came in. Maybe.
Thank you. Julie says thank you.
Well, that was easy. Okay, well, then you're quite welcome. All right, any other questions or comments? Rob?
No, I don't think so. I think you probably cleared everything up, and we appreciate everybody for joining us.
Absolutely. And did anything just come in? The chat?
No, just Pat also saying thanks.
Oh,
here's one.
Okay.
All right. You mentioned planning activities are eligible. Could you expand on this, or is it mostly for implementation?
Yes. So we are in the process of funding in a previous round, a planning phase for an estuary restoration project. So yes, they are eligible. The key thing is that folks need to demonstrate the link between the planning activities proposed and how that will result in improved conditions in the estuary. So in this case, in the case I'm thinking about, it's an estuary, and it involves kind of developing the specs, the engineering specs, for a fairly substantial restoration project, estuary restoration project, and a hydrologic reconnection. And so it has to happen in phases, right? So those projects can be very big and they're complicated, and there is definitely a need to fund the planning aspects. And so I hope that provides the answer. So the bottom line is yes, the key thing in making it competitive in terms of the evaluation, as we review these projects, review the LOIs, excuse me, is to just really make that connection between the planning aspects and how that will result in improved conditions in the estuary.
Great. Jessica asks, are partners required for the RFP? If we have project partners, do we need letters of support from them for the LOI?
Short answer is no. The LOI, if you have them and you want to provide them, that they are fine. The intent for the LOI is to basically put forward a project without having quite as much of an administrative burden, if that makes any sense in terms of the application process. So if you want to include them, great. If not, it's fine to just list them as your project partners. I feel like the questions are coming in now.
Yeah. And how many LOIs do you typically receive in a grant round? I think that's a pretty good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. So because this is a relatively new program, the first year out, we had 206, which is pretty intense, and over $40 million worth of requests. The second round, we had, I think, a fair bit of self-selection happen. I think we ended up with somewhere around 70-ish projects proposed in the LOIs. And so that felt to be a more realistic number. So I'm going to assume it's kind of in that, 70 to 100 would be my guess.
All right.
Any other questions?
Are awards made to spread out projects geographically?
The short version is yes. We try to ensure geographic distribution of our projects, kind of share the wealth, share the love. So yes, we do try to look for some geographic distribution in our awards. Next question.
No questions yet.
Okay, so I feel like did we hit our question plateau? Oh,
Just saying thanks.
oh, good. Well, I'm happy that everybody is so thankful. So that's awesome. Okay, so Rob, how about we just go ahead and wrap things up? And like I said, for folks, please don't hesitate to make an appointment with me or send me an email or give me a call. We really want to make sure that we answer your questions because it's in, frankly, everybody's interest to do so. So on that note, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to reading your LOIs. And like I said, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks for joining us.